I'm going to start this video by telling you about a mistake I made myself. In May of 1995, my wife and I visited Bald Head Island for a glorious weekend. By Sunday, we had purchased a second-row lot on South Beach. My wife had the common sense to ask why we had just done that, and on Monday morning, we canceled the contract. That lot is probably oceanfront today, but we got lucky. Most buyers don't have a spouse asking the right question at the right moment. This video is that question 5 times. The most common mistake I see is buyers making a permanent decision based on a temporary experience. They visit in July, they fall in love with a property, and go under contract before they ever ask what February looks or feels like. July on the North Carolina coast is easy. The weather is perfect. The restaurants are open. The beach is full. And everything feels like the life you've been imagining. February is a different story. The restaurants are closed or running limited hours. The neighbors you met in the summer are back in Charlotte. The bridge traffic is gone, which sounds nice until you realize the bridge traffic meant there were people here. I call it the February test. Before you make an offer on any property in Emerald Isle, ask yourself honestly, what does a Tuesday morning in February look and feel like from this address? If you can answer that question and still want the property, you're buying a residence. If you haven't asked yet, you're buying the vacation. Mistake number 2 is underestimating the true cost of ownership. A man came into my donut shop one morning, not a client, just someone who had recently bought a house nearby. We got to talking and he told me that both he and his agent had been completely underprepared for the total out-of-pocket expenses that came with his purchase. He budgeted for the mortgage, but he did not budget for what came with it. On the North Carolina coast, the cost of ownership extends well beyond the mortgage payment. Insurance alone, flood, wind, and homeowners can run from $8,000 to $18,000 per year, depending on your flood zone. Maintenance on a house that lives in salt air runs higher than anything you experienced on the mainland. HOA fees if you're in a condo, utilities during rental season. The list is longer than most buyers expect, and it doesn't show up in the listing description. The fix is simple. Before you make an offer, run the full ownership cost stack, not just the mortgage. I have a video dedicated entirely to insurance costs in Emerald Isle and another on what financing a beach house actually involves. Watch both before you go under contract. The numbers are not a reason to buy. They're a reason to know what you're buying. Mistake number 3 is choosing the wrong part of the island. I had a client who was looking at homes in both Emerald Isle and Pine Knoll Shores, about 10 miles east. He ended up buying in Pine Knoll Shores. It's a beautiful, quiet, all-residential community. He calls me regularly to complain about driving 15 miles for groceries. Location decisions on the coast get made for the wrong reasons. A view from a rental they stayed at once. Proximity to a restaurant they liked on vacation. A price point that happened to be available in a particular neighborhood. None of those are reasons. They're accidents. The right question is what your daily life actually requires. Not in July, but in February. Emerald Isle is divided into 3 parts running east to west. A residential east end, a commercial middle where the grocery and services live, and a quiet residential west end. Each one is a legitimate choice for the right buyer. The mistake is choosing one without understanding what you are choosing. I have a full video on exactly this, how Emerald Isle divides and which part fits which buyers. Watch it before you start making offers. At this point, most buyers realize that there are more moving parts to this decision than they expected. I moved to Emerald Isle in 2016 and I help people relocate here every day. So I see where people get tripped up. I put together a guide that walks through how to think about these decisions, what to look for, what actually matters, and where people tend to get things wrong. If you want that, text the word guide to 919-308-2292 and I'll send it to you. Let's keep going. Mistake number 4 is shortchanging the inspections. I was working with a buyer on a home purchase down east in Atlantic, North Carolina. Part of the inspection process involved locating the septic tank. The septic technician could not find it. My buyer wasn't concerned. The toilets flushed and the sinks drained. He decided to move forward. Later, solid wastes backed up into the drain field pipes. He needed an entirely new septic system. That was an expensive lesson. Coastal inspections are not the same as mainland inspections. A licensed inspector here conducts a visual, non-invasive examination, and an experienced coastal inspector knows what to look for that a mainland inspector may not. Piling conditions, salt air HVAC corrosion, roof age, and the effect on your insurance options, moisture issues specific to the coastal environment. Beyond the standard inspection, a separate wood-destroying organism report is standard practice in this market and should not be optional. The inspection period is the moment in the transaction where information is cheapest. Use it fully. I have a full video on coastal home inspections, what to expect and exactly what to do with what your inspector finds. Watch it before your inspection period opens. Mistake number 5, getting the financing classification wrong. I recently worked with a sharp buyer whose initial goal was to purchase an investment property here in Emerald Isle. He was thorough. He ran the numbers carefully, and what he discovered was that purchasing the home as a primary residence saved him considerable money. He understood the classification. He understood what it meant for his rate and his down payment, and he made the decision accordingly. Most home buyers don't get there on their own. The difference between a second home and an investment property in the eyes of your lender is not just a label. It affects your interest rate, your down payment requirement, and which loan products are available to you. At Emerald Isle price points, where most purchases cross the conforming loan limit into jumbo territory, getting this wrong is not a minor inconvenience. It changes the deal. Talk to a lender who knows coastal purchases before you start making offers, not after you're under contract. And watch my video on financing a beach house before that conversation. It walks through exactly what lenders look for and what questions to ask before you are in the chair. And now for my Denis Fit Test. Every mistake on this list is avoidable. None of them require exceptional knowledge or experience. They require asking the right questions before you're under contract rather than after. Run the February test before you fall in love with a property. Build the full ownership cost stack before you make an offer. Understand which part of the island fits your daily life before you narrow your search. Use a coastal experienced inspector and a WDO report without exception. And talk to a lender about classification before you start shopping. The buyers who are happy 5 years after moving to Emerald Isle are not the ones who got lucky. They're the ones who did this work up front. The ones who are not happy skipped one of these steps, usually more than one. If you want help working through any of these before you go under contract, the link before will get you to my calendar. That conversation is free and it takes only about 30 minutes. Which of these 5 mistakes is the one that you made, or the one you wish someone had warned you about before you bought? Drop it in the comments. I read every one and I answer you directly. And if you found this video helpful and you're serious about buying or living in Emerald Isle or anywhere along the North Carolina coast, I have a free resource for you. Text the word free to 919-308-2292 and I'll send you my book, Live Where You Vacation. It's a deep dive into what it's actually like to live here. Subscribe to join a small but growing group of people who value clarity over hype. Check out this video on Emerald Isle being divided into 3 parts. I'll see you there.